So yesterday I watched a fantastic video by David Zaritsky from the Bond Experience. He got Fletcher and Joe and Calvin on to talk about how Ian Fleming Publications, prior to the 70th anniversary re-release of Ian Fleming's James Bond books, decided to edit them. And I'm sure everyone at Ian Fleming Publications is probably hoping that this was all going to blow over, that, you know, they'd have their 70th anniversary event, they'd launch on a Majesty's Secret Service, and maybe us Bond nerds would stop talking about this. But the fact is, we're not going to stop talking about this. This is an ongoing issue, and it's about to get a bit spicier. So stay tuned, and we'll have a conversation about it. Hi guys, it's me, and oh look, I'm breathing in the scent of delicious political incorrectness. Yep, the original James Bond books, Live and Let Die. That was one that was considered spicy even in the 1950s when this was going to get released. This is the second James Bond book. When it was going to get released in America, the American editor actually came back with a bunch of changes that he suggested that Ian Fleming make, because the way Ian Fleming, who is like a robust colonial Brit, spoke about issues of race and stuff in America, American audiences might not have understood where he was coming from in quite the same way. And so this became the first James Bond book to ever be edited, although all of the edits were signed off by Ian Fleming himself. Flash forward 70 years, and something exciting happens. For the first time ever in the history of James Bond books, the estate of Ian Fleming's family, regains the rights to them, and they decide to launch their own independent publishing house, Ian Fleming Publications, and relaunch the original books with brand new covers. It's meant to be a celebration, but unfortunately, they decided to make one additional change to these books instead of just the new covers. They edited them. They edited all of the books. Well, you know, there's Casino Royale perhaps didn't have any edits in, but a lot of the other books had edits. How significant are the edits? Well, we're not quite sure, and that's part of the problem. There was an uproar. I mean, I was really, really, really incensed by this. It's such a stupid decision. And I put together a petition, got 678 Bond fans to sign it, sent it off to Ian Fleming Publications. Never heard anything from them, which, you know, I'm nobody. I'm just some bloke on the internet, I guess. But it's a subject, it's a topic of conversation that is not going away. Yesterday, David Zaritsky from the Bond Experience got together Joe Darlington from Being James Bond, and he got Fletcher, and he got Calvin Dyson to have this great panel discussion talking about the edits to the James Bond books. And it's very clear that many, many James Bond fans, perhaps most James Bond fans, are still really, really unhappy with the fact that these books are edited. And I think this is a point where the rubber meets the road. We are in a weird time at the moment where a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of publishers in particular, are editing legacy books, like the Roald Dahl books got edited. R.L. Stine was just in the news because Scholastic decided to edit some of his books without telling him, which is shameful. It really is. But when it comes to the James Bond books, there are two things about them that make me think they are the pivot point. This is the front line in the culture battle, because Ian Fleming Publications is its own independent publishing house. They are not HarperCollins, who previously published the James Bond books. They're not Simon & Schuster. They're not Macmillan. They're not one of these big five behemoths. They are an independent publishing house who can make independent decisions, and they can make very good independent decisions. The success of On His Majesty's Secret Service by Charlie Higson shows that Ian Fleming Publications, when they do things right, they do things really, really right. But it also means when it comes to the topic of editing books, this isn't like something that is part of a big behemoth that is a juggernaut that you can't stop. Ian Fleming Publications is a very small publication house, and they are responsible for making this decision. And I think the Bond community, Bond fans, are so big and so coordinated. We're a real community that we will continue to put the pressure on. And at some point, Ian Fleming Publications is going to have to address these edits and what's going to happen moving forward. And one of the linchpins to this conversation is how extensive are the edits in the books, and that's something we don't really know. When all of the newspaper articles came out about this, there were a few examples, like in Live and Let Die. There were examples of how words, you would use in the 50s to describe someone who's black, you'd call them Negro, which is, frowned upon today because it's archaic, outdated language. Back then, it was contemporary language. That's how a black person would describe themselves. There are other sections in the books that got changed where it's difficult to justify those changes for reasons of like racial sensitivity. There's a passage here where he's in Harlem and he goes to a nightclub, and Ian Fleming described the people there as eating like pigs at a trough, and it got changed to the atmosphere was electric or something like that. It got watered down. And how much of Ian Fleming's original text got watered down across the 12 books, the 11 books we think actually got edited, we don't know. But that is a real topic of conversation that I think we need to address, because there is the case to be made of, we live in 2023, perhaps we shouldn't be publishing books or republishing books that use words like Negro. But there is also a very, very real conversation to be had of maybe you shouldn't be editing stuff beyond those terms. And when you do, what is your objective? Why are you doing it? And that is a conversation we haven't really been able to have up until this point, because we don't have a full and comprehensive list of all the edits that were made throughout the books. I know that David Zaritsky got invited to launch the new cover for Your Eyes Only, and he got a list of the edits for that particular book and said they were more extensive than perhaps he'd imagined. So there is going to be a really interesting conversation that happens when we finally get a list of all of the edits that got made in all of the books. Now, Ian Fleming Publications have not been forthcoming with this information, but this information will be forthcoming. I've heard that there are a number of people in the Bond community who are literally going through the original books page by page and comparing them to the new editions and highlighting all of the differences between one and the other. And that means at some point, whether they like it or not, Ian Fleming Publications is going to have to face the music. They are going to have a real adult conversation about why certain changes were made throughout the books. And I think they should get ahead of it. I really do. I emailed Ian Fleming Publications today. Not that it's going to do much good. I mean, I'm a nobody on the internet. When I emailed them with the petition, I never even got a response back. But I emailed them today and said, hey, for the sake of transparency, we would really appreciate a list of all of the edits you made to all of the books. And I'd be really interested to see if they even read that email. But it would be really great if they actually got ahead of this and released a full list of all the edits were made across all the books. Because otherwise it starts to look a bit sketchy. Like, why this? I mean, these are edits that you're making to the books. These books are publicly available. It's not that difficult for somebody to go through page by page and actually compare the old to the new. And so it really leaves a bad taste in my mouth, the fact that Ian Fleming Publications haven't actually made this list of edits available yet. And it makes me wonder why. What is it about the changes that they made that they are reticent to share with the broader community? What are we going to find out when these edits, the list of these edits becomes available? And I think that is going to be a really, really interesting conversation, because, yeah, I'm against censoring the books of any author without their permission. I think that shouldn't be done. But I think when it comes to a literary figure of such significance as James Bond, by an author of such reputation as Ian Fleming, I think then you have to look really closely at the edits that have been made and start to question why. Why were, racial terms for black people taken out, but racist terms for Koreans left in? Why were certain passages omitted? Why were the ethnicities of certain people omitted when you could have just used a more appropriate term? Because, a black doctor, in the book, it might have described the doctor as a Negro doctor, but back in 1958, that was significant. People in Britain reading this were like, oh my God, look, James Bond's actually talking to a doctor who's not white. We don't get that in England. Whereas James Bond, traveling the world, going to all these places, watching the British Empire crumble around him, was able to go to countries like Jamaica and actually see how the people of Jamaica were becoming autonomous in their self-rule. And these books chronicled that. And when you edit the books and make such clumsy edits like that, it dilutes the historical significance, the legacy that Ian Fleming left. So I would be really interested to see what the edits are. How extensive are they? And then we start to have a real conversation about it, because I think on the one hand, you could make a case for like, hey, some of these books contain racially insensitive language. Maybe we should soften that up. But when you go beyond that, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? When you start editing more words than just beyond that, you start to like edit the meaning and the intention and the story and the history behind these books. And that's what really, really concerns me. I talk about how we're in a cultural war, and we are, because people are trying to rewrite history. It's not just in books, it's all over the place, and it's being fought on both sides. Here in America, we have a bunch of right-wing people trying to get books removed from school and public libraries because they talk about LGBTQ issues. In Texas, which has a massive influence on school textbooks in America, they're literally trying to change the description of the term slaves, for example, to like unpaid labor. And that's an interesting topic on its own. I worked with an author, an African-American author, who wanted to look at slavery from the viewpoint of unpaid labor, because black people basically built the United States but weren't credited for it because they weren't even considered American citizens. There are so many different perspectives, and the importance of books like this, like Ian Fleming's books, left the way they originally were, is they offer a historical snapshot into one person, one privileged white person's opinion of racial issues at that time. And then when you get an organization like Ian Fleming Publications editing those books and changing things, you have to wonder, what is your agenda? Why are you changing these things? And I don't know, it, to a certain extent, it kind of concerns me, because it's not being done for commercial reasons. If it is, then Ian Fleming Publications are completely blind. I mean, the James Bond community is very broad and very diverse. It has people of color, it has women, it has gay people. It's not just a bunch of tedious middle-aged white men. However, the interesting thing is, among most of the people that we speak to in the Bond community, no matter what their color, no matter what their gender, no matter what their age, they generally agree that these books shouldn't be edited. So it's kind of like, if your core audience doesn't want these books to be edited, why did you edit them? And that's the question that really needs to be answered. And that's a question, I think, that we can only start answering when we have a full list of all of the edits. So hopefully, Ian Fleming Publications is going to cough that up, and we can have a mature and respectful conversation about that. If they don't, we're going to get a list of those edits anyway. And then we can start to have a mature, respectful conversation about that, which will include the question of why Ian Fleming Publications didn't make this information forthcoming. I don't know. It's a really tricky issue. It's a very sensitive issue. And I know I've been quite vocal about it, and I am very salty about the fact that the Ian Fleming Publications had the audacity to change these books in the first place. But I don't think any of us who are complaining about the edits have it in for Ian Fleming Publications. I mean, I individually think that Ian Fleming Publications as an independent publisher is a really exciting thing. I thought on Her Majesty's Secret Service, they knocked it out of the park. I think they've got a huge opportunity to like bring diversity and inclusion into the James Bond universe by publishing books by people like Kim Sherwood, for example. So there is the opportunity for Ian Fleming Publications to, bring some of what they want to into the James Bond universe, but it's not achieved by editing the old books. And I think this is the point where the rubber meets the road, and at some point Ian Fleming Publications will have to address these edits, address why they were made, address how extensive they are, and then address what's going to happen in the future. Because I'll tell you what, nobody's going to let up about this. I mean, it's the 70th anniversary now, and we've got these terrible vandalized books out on the marketplace, but when it comes to the 75th anniversary, when it comes to the next time that Ian Fleming Publications have to publish new editions of the original James Bond books, we as the Bond community are going to have kept the pressure on Ian Fleming Publications, so they will have to ask themselves, are we going to publish these edited versions, or are we going to listen to our core audience, our core supporters, the people who can make Ian Fleming Publications successful and help protect and uphold the legacy of Ian Fleming? Are we going to listen to those people, or are we going to continue doing what we're doing before? And it is going to be a question they have to ask themselves. And I really hope that Ian Fleming Publications is self-aware enough to make fans like you, me, everybody else actually part of that conversation. We as in the Bond community want Ian Fleming Publications to succeed, but let us help you succeed. Let us tell you what it is that is important to us, so we can continue to support you with the one thing that matters, which is our money. But also, you know, our money, we support the authors, we support the books, we talk about it. We are a vibrant, powerful community. If Ian Fleming Publications can respect us and have a conversation with us and actually see our viewpoint, really good things can happen in the future. And you know, with the success of on His Majesty's Secret Service, I think there are really, really amazing opportunities for the future. But they have to deal with this issue. They really have to deal with this issue, and they are going to have to deal with it soon, because the clock is ticking, and at some point people are going to have a list of all of the edits. We're going to start going through them line by line. We're going to start questioning each and every one, and at that point Ian Fleming Publications would really be in a good place if they had answers prepared. So anyway, I don't know. What do you think about this? Am I just a crazy person? Should I just give it up? Should I just ignore the whole thing? Or am I doing the right thing? Joining all the other Bond fans who would just continue to be incensed by the edits to the James Bond books and want them reversed. Where do you stand? Let me know in the comment section down below. And yeah, I'll continue making videos about James Bond and other topics, and we will continue the good fight to get some answers out of Ian Fleming Publications. We do support you, Ian Fleming Publications. We love you. We want you to succeed, but let us help you, okay? Let us help you. And that involves some mutual respect both ways. Thanks very much, and I'll be back with another video soon. Ciao. I'm Roland Hume. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got a link right here you can click. And otherwise, don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.